Yo, it's Jojo, and I am bringing you my Ice Shards Sorceress today. So I'm playing on hardcore, and I figured with all of these like max roll guides and all of the YouTube guides, most of them are for softcore. So I'm gonna do a little bit more of a focus on defensives here, because getting damage in this game is very simple. Get vulnerable damage, get crit chance and crit damage, try to apply vulnerable somehow, and you use your ability of choice. I mean, most Sorc builds, they play Frost Nova, they play Ice Barrier Teleport, maybe Flame Shield sometimes. They pull stuff together with Inferno, and then you deal damage with either Arc Clash, Flame Wall, or Ice Shards. It's pretty much the same thing. Pretty boring, but in hardcore you do need to think about defenses, and that makes it a bit more interesting. So I am going to show you my gear pieces one by one here in the background, so you can like pause the video, take a look at those over there. They are nowhere near perfect, but they're decent for not having been to World Tier 3 yet. I don't have any sacred items or anything. This is just what I've been going through the story with and completed the game with. So I'm going to bring up the D4 character planner here that they have created on Maxroll. This was a wonderful tool to plan your character. So let's get straight into the skill tree. This is my finished product right here. So you can see we're starting off with Arc Clash, we're getting the Ice Shards, we're getting the defensives, and these passives, they're very strong. And then all of the cold passives with Inferno. We can have some variations here if you want to go Deep Freeze for some more defensives. That is all fine and dandy. And if you even want to skip the ultimates, you can go Hydra instead for some more consistent damage. Or you can just have Arc Clash or maybe one of the other basic skills on your bar to have something to do while you are out of mana. I feel like I am doing way more than enough damage, so I am not picking Glass Cannon because I actually feel like I'm quite squishy already. And this is feeling quite a bit dangerous. So I have decided to max out Teleport instead, and I get Ice Armor from just having a +1 to all defensive skills on my amulet. You could go for Glass Cannon instead and remove some points into Teleport if you need more damage. But that is dangerous. In hardcore, I would definitely want my my unstoppable mobility skill to be up as often as I can. And this is going to be the final product that I am playing right now at level 50. So now we are coming to equipment. Since we're playing hardcore, we want to focus on defensive stats. And our defensive stats, we can find that on the helm, the chest, the legs, and the boots, to some degree. I would argue, I guess, that the neck and the rings also have some defensive stats. So that's what we're first going to focus on right now. In hardcore, we want as much defensives as possible on the pieces where we can get it. On head, cooldown reduction is super important on all sword classes because our defensives are cooldown based. Our barriers, our teleport, our frost nova, cooldown based. So cooldown reduction is priority 1 on all of your pieces where you can get it. Maximum life is just good. Total armor is also very solid right now. And then the last slot, I have lucky hit chance while you have a barrier because we're going to permanently have barriers. We want lucky hit chance to have mana regen. And that is the second objective with the build, I guess. So the first is focus on defensive stats. The second is mana management stats. Because if we're going our Ice Shards don't work and we're doing 0 damage. So all of the stats here that I have chosen are priority 1 defensive, priority 2 mana management. Third comes damage. And of course, there are other stats that you can have here. You can have intelligence, that gives you more damage. If you have like cold damage or levels to Hydra on your head, that also works fine and dandy. These are just like the perfect stats, in my opinion, on a helm right now. And of course, the defensive aspects here. This Frost Nova extra charge is very cool. This I would recommend getting. You can't get this as an aspect, so unfortunately you're going to need to find this one out in the open. But it isn't too rare, so you should be able to find it fairly quickly. We're checking the armor here, the chest. Damage reduction, if it's close or from crowd control or from distant works as well. Just straight up the normal damage reduction, the life, the maximum armor. This is definitely what I would try to look for when I look at chests. You have, once again, intelligence or something close to it. That also works. And this one, damaging an elite grants you a barrier. This is pretty cool, since most of the times elites are what's going to kill you, so having some extra tankiness against elites is always a good thing. And then we come to the legs, same thing as the chest right here. Damage reduction from close, because we want to get close to teleport and freeze. Damage reduction, life, total armor, and then aspect of disobedience. This is just OP. You can, on your Hydra, put some extra. Hydra also burns enemies for some more dots, which will help you apply this up to 100 stacks. On your legs, we do want ranks to Frost Nova and Teleport, very important, and then mana cost reduction is probably the most important right here, because you want your ice shards to cost as little mana as possible. And then movement speed is just the icing on top. If you want, you can change this this legendary aspect here to be the one that gives you lucky hit while having a barrier, 10 to 20%. This one is also pretty good. You can have that on boots. Or you can have this one right here. Extra crowd control duration. Your freezes are going to be longer. Very good. While enemies are unstoppable, if they survive for that long, you will deal extra damage. This is the only aspect that gives you damage on the boost slot. So for the end game, this is probably the best one. But now this one you can get from your aspects, your Codex of Power. So that's what I have been going for right here. Now we're checking the weapons, finding something with vulnerable damage, damage to crowd control, core skill, intelligence, something similar. There's crit chance, crit damage, all of those work perfectly fine. You can just get damage stats right here. This is probably the best ones that I could find at least. And you want the green sockets. I actually forgot to talk about sockets here in the defensive slots. So damage reduction while control impaired is probably the most important socket, to be honest, because this is a lot of damage reduction. 7, 14, 28, 35% damage reduction while control impaired. That is a lot. That is a lot, to be honest. And this works as soon as you get anything like slowed, dazed, chilled. As long as you have any kind of CC effect applied to you, you're just going to take like 35% less damage, which is a lot. And I think that's way better than getting like 10% extra life. That is unfortunately not stacking with your life rolls from gear. So that is unfortunate. And of course, when we're talking about the Ice Shards build, you gotta have this legendary aspect. Ice Shards pierces and deal less damage per subsequent enemy hit. The pierce is very important because when they pierce, they can still ricochet, so you get like extra bouncing Ice Shards from the enchantment. And this, without this power, the Ice Shards build doesn't quite work. So as you can see, we don't have a two-handed weapon. We're going for one-handers and a focus because the one hand gives a lucky hit chance that I've already talked about and we need a lot. And then the focus gives us cooldown reduction as well as a resource generation, a mana cost reduction, which are also important as heck for our build to work. Crit chance is just the cherry on top. On the fourth stat, you can probably have pretty much anything as long as it gives you damage, like crit damage, like damage to crowd control, etc, etc. And of course, aspect of control on pretty much every build is mandatory for when you stagger bosses. All of these effects are a multiplicative and add on top of each other. And then this is pretty much the most important part right here. On the neck, cooldown reduction, priority 1, mana cost reduction, priority 2, and then rank to all defensive skills, so you can save some points on putting a point into Ice Barrier and then get some extra onto your Frost Nova and Teleport. Very cool. And then movement speed is just the icing on top, not needed, but it is good. But what is important here is the aspect. You definitely want Elementalist aspect on this one, because even the minimum roll that you can get from the Codex is still 30% crit chance. 30% crit chance in the early game, that puts me at like 50% crit chance. I mean, yeah, I'm at 21, so with the aspect, I'm definitely at 51.4, which is more than enough. And then with this one, critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed. You start blasting your machine gun. And here, using a cooldown restores mana just for that extra efficiency. Unfortunately, I don't have this power. I need to go get it. There are some other choices for legendary powers that I will go through right now. So some other offensive options that you can put on your rings or something similar. This one, the offensive aspect, you deal extra damage while you have a barrier active. You are going to have a barrier pretty much every time. Edge Masters is also decent, but this one really requires you to take a look at your mana and only cast when you're at full mana. That way you're going to get the 20% extra damage. If you find the extra Hydra, you can definitely go for that one while leveling. That one definitely helps a lot with the consistent damage, and you don't need to go for an ultimate skill. This one is also pretty good. It is less damage than the straight up barrier one, but it is some extra damage to a vulnerable if you have a barrier. This also works pretty much all the time, but if you can find the one I previously showed, that one is better. And that's it for gear. Let's take a look at the Paragon Tree here. So I've been looking at a lot of Paragon trees, and most people are only like straight ahead going for offensive power as soon as possible. And while that may make sense, I don't really know how it's going to feel in the later stages of the game. I feel like I want to be a bit more defensive here in hardcore to make sure that I don't die, and we can scale our damage slowly but surely as we get better gear and upgrade our gear, etc. So I'm going to start off with trying to go as defensive as possible. That's why I chose to have Territorial in the first glyph. That way you get 10% damage reduction against close enemies. Other defensive options are Reinforced. This one needs 25 willpower. That way I get 10% damage reduction while you have an active barrier. But the bonus part here, bonus to all rare nodes within range, is not very good. I guess you would get some extra physical damage. That's not something I'm looking for. This at least will give us some extra damage to close enemies as well. I think that's pretty cool. Otherwise, the Elementalist one is very good here, since it increases the range of, or increases the nodes with non-physical damage in the near vicinity. The Elementalist is pretty cool here. You have enough to trigger the 40 intelligence effect. And then you're going to get buffs on the Elemental Balance and the Erudite passive, as well as these nodes here. But I wanted to go for defensive, so we're going to see how that works. But otherwise, Destruction, of course, crit damage on your core skills is going to be important. Control, we are going to crowd control stuff, as well as getting the extra 20% increased damage to stun or frozen enemies, also very good. Destruction and control is something I'm going to look to incorporate into the build somehow. But first, we do Territorial. We also want to have Exploit for the extra vulnerable damage, because we are going to burst. So this gives us damage to chilled targets, and from what I understand, the frozen targets are also chilled. So this should work, since we're not chilling in any way, but we are freezing. So enemies deal 13% reduced damage to you for 5 seconds after they are no longer frozen. So that seems like it could be pretty good with our build. If the mobs somehow survive the freeze burst that I apply, then they should be doing 13% reduced damage. And then I take 10% less damage, and we can slot in Elementalist in the last one. Yeah, I'm definitely taking Elemental Summoner for the first board here, because it just has some really good rare nodes, to be honest. It has these attack speed nodes right here that is very easy to get to, and I think you do want to front load some of your power once you first go through the Paragon board, so you get stronger when you first enter into World Tier 3. And then we're going to go over here to get the maximum mana nodes. This maximum mana also helps, of course, with staying above 100 mana a bit easier. And then we're going to go straight for the Glyph Socket, where we can put in either Frostbite. This should give us some mana. This should give us some damage against elite packs, of course, with our freeze. But this is going to be useless against bosses, so that is unfortunate. Maybe I could like swap this out to Imbiber. Could do Reinforce. Reinforce definitely works. I would gain the 10% damage reduction while you have a barrier, but the 25% bonus all rare nodes will be completely wasted since I'm not taking any rare nodes. In that case, I think Imbiber would be better, because that would at least give me 13% damage while healthy. So that would at least give me some kind of effect. Frostbite here, unfortunately, sure, it will give me more damage against packs, but it will not help me at all against bosses, so that is unfortunate. And then for the third board, we're going to go with the vulnerable effect. The Frigid Fate board here has a lot of vulnerable nodes, as you can see here. Vulnerable damage, damage reduction from vulnerable, and as well here in the middle. And we're going to take the Elementalist node because there's just a lot of intelligence here. And unfortunately, there's not enough dexterity or willpower or anything in the vicinity here to activate any other node that I could see. So that's why I decided to go for the Elementalist in the end. Because at least this is gonna automatically give us 15% extra damage with this effect right here. Since we're dealing fire, cold, or lightning, when we teleport, we deal lightning damage. We deal obviously cold damage with our ice shards. And if we pop Flame Shield or if we pop Inferno to grab everything together, we are gonna deal all three of the effects, and which gives us 15% extra damage. This is just a pretty good node. Then later, when we have leveled up our glyphs, we're gonna be able to swap this around for some better efficiency. But for now, I think this is a pretty good start. This should take me to around level, I don't know, 60, 70, somewhere around there. And once I have gotten to World Tier 4, I guess I will have to update this build and see how it goes, I guess. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed. And do like, comment, and subscribe. As well as hit me down in the comment section below if you have any questions, if you want to suggest any other builds or something that I try. I am open to suggestions. Anyways, thanks and see you in the next one.